Hi there, everyone. Happy Monday. Wow. If there is such a thing, of course there is. Happy Monday is so good, so well known. Here we are, a brand new week on Adobe Live. With me to start off with, Tony Harmer, yes, aka the Design Ninja, of course. And there you are. And today we're going to be doing some InDesign stuff. The thing we did, the intro level thing, was quite popular a few weeks ago. So we're going to be revisiting that. Or not that project, but we're going to be kind of building on from where that project was. When my screen catches up, it will tell me, there we go, who's in the chat. So before we start doing that, what we can do is mention that if you're watching on YouTube, it is fine to do that. Go ahead and do that all you want, but you won't be able to get involved in the chat. So where you should do or should be is at be.net/Adobe Live. And you can join in with such fab people as Sean, who's in the chat, Guten Tag, Kirsty, who was first in today. Well done, Kirsty. Hi to you. Michelle's here. Susan's here. Of course, ever present is amazing Tim in the background, saving me from too many fluff ups. Neil is here. Hi, Neil. Good to see you. Jack is here as well. I think I've mentioned Sean's very prolific in the chat right now. So super good. Patrick is with us as well. Caroline, hello. Good to see you here. Carol. Wow, so many, already lots of chat going on there. Nice to see you all here. Well, we've only got an hour. We've already eroded 2 minutes of that, and there's so much big me on the screen. Let's get rid of it and get into InDesign, where we can get started on our project today, which is building a flyer. Okay. Reverb Mike in the background saying wall of books, check. Time to add a plant. I'm not that wealthy, Reverb. Anyway, moving on. Okay, let's go across to InDesign then and get cracking on that. So here I am in InDesign, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click on the InDesign icon up at the top left there just to go into the interface. Now, at the moment, I am using the advanced workspace just to test myself there, but I'm going to switch to Essentials Classic, and I'm also going to reset Essentials Classic because, you know, modifications and all of that stuff. Now, flyers can come in various different formats. There's no real true predetermined size for a flyer as such. It's generally half of the standard size of paper that you're using, but sometimes not, sometimes a third. So if you have a sheet of A4, you might decide to just chop it in half for A5. Okay, of course, if you're chopping along the long edge. And if you were using it in landscape format, you might decide to chop that into 3. But we're going to do the most common kind here, at least in the UK, which is an A5 flyer. So let's go ahead and create a new document. So File New or Command N for that. And let's get this set up. Now, last time I was doing InDesign here, I created a preset for my poster. So we're going to do exactly the same here for the flyer. We'll go ahead and create that. Saves me doing all this work again. So a flyer's got 2 sides, typically, of course. So this is going to have 2 pages just here. We're going to be working on the first of those pages this week. Okay, and I don't want facing pages on here. Those are things that have a spine, okay, like a book. So we're just going to leave that unchecked. Start page 1 is not a book, so it doesn't really matter. You could type whatever number you wanted into there, really, I guess. And a primary text frame, not something I'm looking for today. In terms of page size, well, let's go ahead and choose A5, so 148 by 210 amongst friends anyway. Okay, and the orientation, therefore, is portrait because the height is greater than the width. Now, if I want to use some columns to assist me with the layout, I could do that just here. Maybe put some columns in later because it's not going to be equal between the front and the back. So I think I'm going to just go ahead and leave that just at 1. I'm going to have some margins here, however. I'm going to drop these up to about 10. So I'm just clicking on the rotator there like so. In fact, you know what? I'm going to dial that down. Let's go for 8 here. So, and the link is on, so all of those fields changing for me at the same time. Tim, by the way, adding in a tip for Reverb that keeping plants alive in a studio environment is not an easy task. There is actually a company that will actually sell you plants that are low maintenance, i.e. perfect for me, but then they do really well and my wife steals them and takes them into the house. But that's another story. And hi, Liz, in the chat there. Am I overwriting the poster preset? Sean is asking. No, I'm not. This is going to be a completely different thing. If I did need to overwrite it, Sean, just so you know, all I would need to do is create a new preset with the same name and it will overwrite that. Okay, so margins there, 8mm. I've got the bleed and slug area open at the bottom here. Standard bleed for sheet fed. Okay, so that's sheets that fly into a printing machine. Is 3mm. Sometimes with things like web offset, that's those giant rolls that you see. Sometimes it's as high as 12.7. Okay, but for here, 3. What I'm going to do is go ahead then and click the save document preset, and I'm just going to call this A5 flyer because that way I don't have to do all that hard labor that I've just done, okay, ever again. Super good. I'm going to hit OK, and InDesign creates me my document. If I zoom out, you can see there's page 1 and page 2, or the front and back, depending on how you want to look at it, but they are all there for me, or both there for me. Let's have a quick catch up with what's going on in the chat, just in case there's anything I missed apart from the wall of books, which I read out earlier. That's very funny. Cacti, yeah. Oh, actually, there is a cactus in the window. I forgot about that one. There we are, super good. Yes, and that's very, very low maintenance. There you are. Right, okay, nothing of any particular substance for now, so I'll check in again shortly. Right, okay, so this is all done just now, and I've got a particular idea in mind for what I'd like to do here, which of course this is kind of a training thing really, so it's not a real document, just so you know, but I've got a fictitious place that do farmers market stuff, and that's what we're going to do here. And we're going to show a lot of pictures of produce and scenes from farmers markets, and that's what the client would actually like me to do, would like me to make sure that the front of the flyer contains a lot of information, okay, about the markets themselves, so people can see how great they are and all of the different things they can get there. And Liz is saying in the chat, what, it's not real? I'm sorry, Liz, no, it's not. It's not really. The place is fictitious, and so is the content. In fact, the place is Great Throppington, which is not real at all. It's totally fictitious. Right, so I'm going to draw a grid of frames ready for my content. So I'm going to tap F on the keyboard to get my frame tool. And I'm actually going to start right at the corner of the page. I'm not going out into the bleed just yet. And I am going to click and drag down to the opposite corner. Now, I'm not releasing at that point. I'm leaving the input device, so whether that's a mouse or a trackpad, I'm leaving that engaged, right? And what I'm going to do is hit the right arrow key on my keyboard. So I'm going to do that 3 times, and you can see I've got 4 columns there. Now I'm going to hit the up arrow key 1, 2, 3, 4 times there, maybe 5. Let's have a look at that. No, I think I'm going to go with 4. And you can see it's drawn me. If I now release the trackpad at this particular moment, it's created me an array of frames like so. And that's a very, very quick way. It's called grid drawing, and it's super good fun inside of InDesign. Very quick way to create an array. Now, just so you can see them slightly more efficiently than you can at the moment, what I am going to do is I'm going to give them a fill color. So I've just gone to the control strip at the top here, okay, and I'm clicking for the fill. And I'm just going to give these all a cyan fill, but as that's quite full on, well, I'm just going to take that down to about 20, something in that sort of region. Anyway, there we go. So now you can see all of those things. Now, there are a few things I'm going to need to do to these frames to prepare them, okay, for the content that's going to appear inside them. Even if I override some of that later on, this is one of the things you can do. If you're planning out a document, okay, you can go ahead and prepare it for the content. So the way I'm going to do that, I could do this with a right click, but I'm going to go up to the object menu in the top level menu system here. And I'm going to come down to to fitting just here, and then choose frame fitting options. So this means that rather than having to click in the controls in the control strip or choose anywhere else once the content is in, I'm kind of preparing the ground for them to come in. Okay, so what I might like to do is I might like to enable auto fit. Now you're going to see where that's useful in just a little bit, hopefully. I'd also like the frame to be filled proportionally. Okay, I don't want the content to fit to the frame for this particular thing or anything like that, but just to fill the frame as much as it can. And from the center is fine. That's pretty standard to use that, although there are some instances where you might actually want to change that. But for now, filling from the center is just great. That means it will have the center of the content aligned with the center of the frame. And that's something I could probably show you a bit later on. Don't need to worry anything about crop amounts, any of that stuff just there. So we can just hit OK. And now those frames are set up to work with. However, we've got a couple of different things here to actually look at. Now, I made one tiny error, okay, when I was setting up the document, which I'm now just going to have to correct. But fortunately, we can correct this very, very quickly. The gap that I've got here between all of these frames is larger than the gap I'd actually want. So how do I fix that? Well, what I'd have to do, I'm going to have to redraw these frames, but when I'm not explaining it, I can do it pretty quickly. Okay, but what I need to do is I need to go to the document setup here. Okay, and you can see that I've got my margins. I haven't got the columns there. So if I come out of that and go to layout, margins and columns, it's this, the gutter value, which is determining how big those gaps are. Even when you're drawing with something like grid drawing, or if you were placing text in columns, that's how it's going to work. Okay, so I'm just going to bring this down to 3 millimeters just here, because I figure there are 3 gaps there. Okay, that's going to be 9 in between each of those. So I'm going to do that. Now, this won't change as such. There is a way that I can change it, but we're not going to use that at the moment. I'm just going to basically redraw. Well, how many did I have there? 3 by 5, 4 by 5. So let's just get rid of those. And again, with the frame tool, up to the top corner, down to the bottom here, right arrow, 1, 2 to give me the 4, sorry, 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 to give me those just there. So you can see how fast that is and how I don't actually have to worry about that too much. Okay, so now we're back where we were. The unfortunate side is that I would actually have to go to the frame fitting again just here. So I'm just going to do that one more time. So I'll just do fill frame proportionally, auto fit, and hit OK. Again, you can see once you're practiced at doing it, just how fast that is to actually do. So if you want to learn how to draw with grids in this particular way, just practice. You'll get around to doing that very, very quickly. Okay, so here's the thing. This is going to actually print. So we need to use the bleed because we've got content that is right on the edge of the page. Okay, so we're going to need to do something with that content. Okay, so we'll need to make sure that any of these boxes that are on the edge bleed to the outside. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to get the direct selection tool here and just drag across the tops of those rectangles just there. And you can see straight away, okay, that they are all selected, and I could use my arrow keys, okay, to move those up into the bleed. Now, if I needed to do that as an actual calculation, it's possible for me to do that. So I'm going to show you an alternate way of doing that in just a second, right? But essentially, I need those things to be out just there. This method works pretty well, okay? But there's another method, like I said, for doing it precisely. And I've just gone and selected that left-hand range. Let's just go ahead and color that slightly differently so you can see it nice and easily just now. Okay, so here's the other way of doing it. What we can do is we can go ahead and change the reference point just here. We can change it to the right-hand side. Now, it doesn't really matter here where it is on the right-hand side, but just change it to the right-hand side. We can then go to the width here and type +3 mm, like so, hit return, and you can see now they've grown out to the side. So if you need to be absolutely certain, okay, that you've grown those in the right direction, then that's the way you could do it. Let's do that again just over here. So I'll just color these ones slightly differently so they're nice and easy for you to see. They're holding on to their tint value, which is nice. Okay, and so I'm just going to change this to the left-hand side. Okay, and then I'm going to change the width. But if you want to know a really cool way to do this from the keyboard, I'm going to show you, right? I'm going to describe it to you because it's kind of difficult to show you. There's a command inside of InDesign that says shift, and this is why it isn't in the shortcuts, by the way, because when I tell you what the shortcut adds up to, right, you'll see why it's not in their little table of shortcuts. Shift application focus to first available input field in the control strip. Okay, it's quite a thing, right? So what is the first available input field here? Well, it's this one, the X location. So if I do Command 6, it takes me up to that field. It highlights it for me without me having to click on it. I can use my Tab key to navigate through the fields. I can use Shift Tab to navigate backwards, and then I can even go beyond that input field. If I Shift Tab again, now it's difficult to see, but it does have some highlighting, okay, around that box there. There is some highlighting there. I don't know if screen zooming is going to work here, but we'll give it a go anyway. Right, so it is highlighted. I can now use my arrow keys to go around here. And if you're like me and you're just a shade over 21, you would remember Snake on the old Nokia telephones, right? So you could go ahead and do that from the keyboard by moving that around. Then you could just tab through the fields, okay, and then just do +3 on the side there because it's going to add 3 millimeters. I don't need to type because it's the same value. And you can see how that's grown out. I'll do the bottom set just here. So I've selected everything on the bottom. So if I do Command 6, then Shift Tab, move this up to the top. Doesn't matter where it is on the top, but just do that. Okay, +3. Okay, then it will go ahead and grow those. Oh, sorry, it does because I'm on the top right. So let's just go back to that. Hold on one second. I should have known that actually, but there you are. Right, down to the center, just there, tab, tab, tab. Okay, right arrow there to clear that, +3, boof, and there you go, you're down. I think I've actually grown that out both ways, but anyway, it doesn't really matter too much just there. Oh, I did it on the width. That'll be why, stupid Tony. Try that again. Oh, it's because I'm so excited about showing it, that's all it is. There we are. So we've got all of those frames ready to go. However, right, this isn't the most exciting design in the world, right? Just a grid of images like this is horrible. Well, it's not horrible, but it's just not very exciting. So I want to mix that up a bit. How can I mix that up? Well, I can mix it up by changing some of the dimensions. Now, horizontally, I actually want to keep these with these regular column widths, but vertically, I'd like to change them. And there's a tool that can do that for you quickly in InDesign. It's called the Gap tool, right? Here it is over in the toolbox, and U is the key to access it, okay? Just think you should really be using this to make gaps. I don't know, something like that anyway. And here's the thing, right? Now, this does a few different things. You'll notice that as I hover over gaps, okay, it's going ahead and highlighting those gaps. Now, so if I wanted to change everything like that attached to a gap, I could. I'm just going to undo. However, I just want to work between two neighboring objects. How do I do that? Well, if I take my cursor over to the first gap here on the left-hand side, what I'm going to do is hold down Shift and then click and drag, okay, to change those proportions. And I'm just going to keep Shift held down, right, and go ahead and move some of these things around just to make them slightly more interesting. Now, I'm not touching the top 4 in the center there. I've got a reason for not wanting to mess with those. But I can change these and just make this much, much more interesting really, really quickly. Let's go ahead and do that. If I want them to be equal, you'll notice that as I get to a point where they are level, if I did want that, then it will show me. There's a green line going between the two. I don't know how well you can see that. Okay, but there is one there. So let's just go ahead and move some of these things around. I'm wondering if you're liking this shortcut. And I wonder if one of the questions is, that you're probably asking yourself if you've never seen this before, is how do I remember all of those shortcuts? Well, do you know what? InDesign even contains something to help you with your shortcuts, right? If I go to the window menu and come down to utilities, in here we have something called tool hints. Okay, so if I select that, here's the tool hints panel. At the moment, it's telling me that I have the gap tool active. If I pick the selection tool, so if I tap V right here to get the selection tool, you'll see it will change to the selection tool. But if I go back to gap tool, it tells me what the tool does. Okay, it also tells me what modifier keys will work with it and the shortcut to access it. Okay, so you can explore all of these tools inside of InDesign, okay, using this panel. It's like training wheels for InDesign. Really, really useful thing to have. Okay, so that's kind of an interesting array. I'm just going to save this now into a folder here. So I'm just going to call this Flyer GT. Actually, I ought to call it GT Flyer. There's a reason for that. But anyway, let's go ahead and do that. So GT Flyer. Brilliant. Okay, so let's have a quick catch up with what's been going on in the chat very, very quickly. Annika's in the chat. Annika, I saved already. There you go. Hello, it's good to see you here. Caroline saying, boom, been using InDesign for years and never knew that. That's the shortcut. Tim is saying, boof, woo, woo, undocumented, because it is. I love all the undocumented ones. Okay, so, oh, and then there's people talking about farmers markets. Oh dear. Happy in the kiddie pool, but Tony is excited to share stories from the deep end. Yes. There we go. Oh, fantastic. Great. Everybody's here. Oh, Debaldo in the house saying good evening, everybody. Hi. Oh dear. It's okay that you haven't saved today yet. Oh, I was in the process of doing, so I didn't read. There we go. Annika, you can do it all again with 3 clicks and a sly mustache twist. There we go. Liz, don't let him get away with it. I nearly said, but didn't want to take away from your role. Annika, the queen of saves for Adobe. One day she'll be on the main stage at Max going, just save. And everyone will go crazy with the applause. Ah, there we are. Super good. And Tim, for the people who are using, have their shortcuts written on sticky notes, stuck to a monitor. Tim says he'd need an 80-inch TV. He was to use all of his sticky notes with the monitor method, but there we go. Hi, Kirsty, by the way. Right, so you know with the I'm not worried about the color content for the frames. The images are going to fill these frames, so the color really isn't that important, and I may make changes. So I'm going to leave the colors on, although typically, once they do have the image content inside of them, I normally just select the whole lot and then just switch the color there to none. But for now, we're going to leave that. So let's go ahead and bring in some images. Okay, so I'm going to pop out to Adobe Bridge. Okay, so let's get that just going just here. So we'll get Bridge up, and here are some of the photographs I've had supplied, okay, for this particular project. So we've got a whole bunch of things. Bridge is really useful for reviewing stuff like this. It's nice and easy to work through. You can get a nice big view of it, and then you can select the things that you want to use. So I reckon I've got about 20 boxes on there. Let's just have a quick tab back and check. So yeah, I think 5x4 is still 20. Yeah, it's not changed in all the time I've been using it. So there we go. So we've got some cake. I think definitely we should have, right, Great Throppington want this to be as inclusive as possible. So we need to get some of these lovely vendors in here. So this one definitely. So what I'm going to do is right click that, and I'm going to label it okay here a second. Now, I know that's a different thing possibly for how photographers might use this, but what I do is I might label it as red for if I'm not going to use it, amber for is that's shortlisted for use, and then green if I'm definitely used it in the publication. That guy's super fun. So I'm just going to go ahead and say that one's, well, actually, I might just say that one's going in defo in a bit, but we'll go ahead and it's a nice shot of some bread. So that one's definitely going to go in. I might just click through a few more and just go back to a line. Yeah, that guy's got a great look about him. There's a transaction taking place. Oh, another one, but it's got a wee one inside of it. So that one might be good. So I'm just going to command click some of these. So those three just there. Okay. And then I'm going to label those, okay, as possibly going in. Cake, definitely going in. Got to have the cakes. Cheese, that's kind of a nice shot of all of these different cheeses, but there you are. But you know, Bridge used to have a mode called compact mode. Doesn't have it anymore, but that used to be so handy because you could just park it in the corner while InDesign was running and then just work through it. But there we are. Hey, that's a nice cake. That one's going in. Definitely want that to go in. Some coffee beans, maybe. Collecting a thingy, a crate of fruit or vegetables, even. That's nice. Flan, that's going in, or flan, as they're known to say in California. In fact, all three of those are going in, like so. And let's click through a few more of these. That one's definitely going in. Just really cool. Jam. Come on. Cheese grommet. And I could use my arrow keys, by the way, to navigate through these locally grown stars. Oh, I've got to show you something on this particular image just here. I'm going to click to get the loop view. And I noticed that this is a stock image, right, for Reels. You can see that the board here says takeaway on it. And I'm wondering, if it didn't say takeaway, where's the eat in option? Just saying. But anyway. All right, so jams going in. They're going in. Locally grown is nice. Going in. Also going in. Oh, there's quite a few of those things there going in. In fact, I'm just going to go ahead and pick. We've got those Danishes. That one. That one's going in. That one's going in. That one's going in. And that whole row is going in. So let's do that. And that's good, I think. Let's have a look at this one. So selecting some vegetables. Yeah, I think that's going to go in. Selling cheese. Nice image of the cheese. Bad, perhaps, for this one, for that one. So maybe I'll come back to that one. She's super engaging. So let's go ahead and do that. So that one's possibly going in. In fact, for all the ones, they're mixing up some fajitas. They can definitely happen. Yeah, that's got something about it. A crop of that might work. So let's go ahead and label that. And then that. How many have I got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. In fact, if I go ahead and pick up all, there is a way for me to pick up all the labels there. Brain not working at the moment. So I need to use the command key here. That would be control on Windows. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Then I let it go again. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. So that's more than I actually need. So which ones now do I actually want to get rid of? Okay, so I'm going to actually label all of these as green for going in to start off with, but I just need to ditch 2 of them. Which ones am I going to choose? That one's nice, but the composition again maybe not working for that one. Oh no, I didn't include that anyway. That one's coming out, so we're just going to get rid of that one. No label just there. And this is handy because you can then go back to this if you suddenly decide you brought the images into InDesign and you find out you need more, you can actually come back and see visually this way what you've selected already. Anyway, I'm kind of happy with the ones there. So I'm just going to pick up all of the ones with that label on. I can't remember how to select them by label, but I'm not too worried about that just for the moment. InDesign is the main thing today. There we go. Right, so I'm going to choose all of those. I'm then going to right click on any one of them because it's the whole selection. and I'm going to choose place in InDesign. So I've made all of my selections in a clutter-free environment, or relatively clutter-free, and you can see here that I have them loaded into my cursor. So this one I'm going to click in just here. This one, this vendor, I'm going to do up here, some bread. Let's put some of the bread in there. This vendor as well. Let's go just there. And we've got the cake. Got some cake in there. And I'm just going to basically click through as a sort of a fishmonger thing there. Let's go down there. With that one, flan, lots of cakes. Someone buying stuff, jam, and just click these through, and I'm just going to place them however they sit now. There we go. So we'll do that. Danish ears, sausages, salchichas. Okay, there we go. She's definitely in this one, making the fajitas. I'm just going to hit escape, and that purges that and any others from the cursor. So I just hit escape and they'll disappear. Let's have a catch up on what's going on in the chat. We have the technology. We can change the sign. We can change the sign. Absolutely. Yes, cheese, says Liz. Very good. Very good. Okay. You would sit inside the truck awkwardly chewing your food next to the generator. I think that's what you would do. It just, when I picked it up, I thought, oh man, that's random, but it's going in. Anyway, Steve Cossaboom in the house. Hello. See, Rick is here also. Brilliant. Good to see you in here. Okay, you can just filter on all photos with a green label. You can, Michelle, but I can't remember just off the top of my head how to do the filter view, but not too much to worry about just at the minute. So some of these things, okay, you can see they're all filling the frame proportionally. Okay, and if I go ahead and choose on, let's choose this one at the top here. Let's zoom in right here. So this one. Now, if I click on the content grabber, that's the small circle in the middle, and then just zoom out just a tiny bit here. If you look at the bronze edges, okay, of the actual image itself against the image inside the frame, you can see that the centers match. So when I was talking about placing things from the center, okay, they match like so. It's the filter panel. Thanks, Tim. From that, I couldn't remember off the top of my head. I was just so excited to be doing this. Okay, so you can see how that works from the center being put in. Okay, but I'm now going to pretend that my client is phoning me up. Oh, really? Oh, right. Okay. I haven't got their logo in there yet, and they're quite upset about that. So I need to do something to fix it. And I've had a further discussion with them off camera. Okay, and I've decided I'm just going to clear out some of these frames. So I'm just clicking the content grabber to access the content here. And I'm just going to cut that one because definitely going to use that, and then edit and paste into to drop that into the frame. And this one here, okay, is going to have its content removed as well. So let's go ahead and bring in the logo. Okay, so Command D to do that. And here is the actual logo just there. And let's just click and drag like so. So here it is. Right. Okay, it's in its own little frame just there. Yep. There we go. Great Throppington Farm and Food Markets. That's the logo that they're using just there. Okay, they also want me to put in a text box with some information underneath it, which was a detail that I forgot conveniently just a second ago. But we'll deal with this one first. So they want the logo to sit on there, but they don't want to lose the photographic content around it. So how do I get around that one? Okay, well, let me just move that off to the side just for the moment here. That's kind of interesting. Is that a GPU thing going on there? It is. Right, okay. So what I need to do is to draw an ellipse here, okay, that's going to accommodate that logo. So I'm just positioning my cursor. InDesign has a little system of cursor assistants, okay, that show you when you're at specific portions of the page or relation to objects. And I'm seeing that right now. It's a small white arrow. And hold down Option or Alt to draw from the center and Shift. And then I'm going to go ahead and draw that out like so until it's about the size that I'd like it to be. Okay, that's perfect. just there. That's exactly what I need. Now, this frame at the moment has, or this shape at the moment, I've drawn a shape, not a frame just here. Okay, that's perfect the way it is. Okay, so I'm going to just swap over the fill and stroke. So Shift X is a way to do that on the keyboard. If you don't want to do it via the keyboard, or you can't for whatever reason, okay, there is a small curved arrow just above the fill and stroke parts in the toolbox there for you to use as well. Okay, so this is going to be a two-step process. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select all four of the blue shapes here. Let's just change their color so they're very, very bright for you. Let's make them yellow, like so, just for the moment. And then I'm going to join those together. Now, to do that, I need to use a pathfinder, which is a way of adding and subtracting shapes from each other. So I'm going to go to the window menu, into Object and Layout, and choose Pathfinder. And this is what the Pathfinder panel looks like. There's quite a lot more going on in here than there is in Illustrator, which could do with some of these things, to be quite honest. But what I want to do is to join those four things together until they become one shape. Now, if you take a look at them now, before I do that, you can see that each box, each frame there, has its own individual cross mark inside of it. So the diagonal lines that show you it's a frame. When I hit this, the add command, you can see now that the cross or the diagonal lines actually goes across all four because they are effectively the same shape. I'm then going to select the circle that I have just here. Okay. And I'm going to shift click the compound shape that I've just made from those four things. That's effectively what's happened just there. Okay. I'm then going to use this command, subtract, and that will punch out like so. However, we're nearly there. This is somewhere where that logo can live, but they'd also like the images back, or some images back, okay, around it. So how do we do that? Well, we can right click on it. We can go to the object menu. We can come down to the path options here and choose release compound path. If you're an Illustrator user and you use keyboard shortcuts to do that, you'll be happy to know that the compound path shortcuts inside of InDesign are exactly the same, okay, as those in Illustrator. And suddenly all of these things have become frames just like before. So what I think I'm going to do here is I'm just going to cut or add in some of the bread pictures. I'm going to go back to bridge and I'm going to pick 4 pictures up from there. Okay, so I know that this bread, let me just switch between the two, is not in there. So I'm going to deselect everything else, select that bread. I'm also going to select maybe these pastry whirls because I don't think they're in there. If they are, I can deal with it. Let's go with the cheeses just here. That's not being used. Actually, I'll take away that Danish one. I'll go with some coffee beans and we'll have the other breads just for the purposes of whatever. Right click again. So down to place in InDesign like so. And then we have those. If you want to cycle through them to get to the image you want, just use the arrow keys on your keyboard. So you can just move through them like so. So I think this bread one will work quite well there. I'm going to put that other bread diagonally opposite. The cheese is at the top and then the coffee beans just there. Excellent. I can now bring this logo over into place. Okay, I'll just move that down a little bit here. Okay, so that's just about in the right place. There's another way I could have done this, but anyway, that's just fine for now. It's a little bit big, so I'm going to use the transform tool. So I'm just going to tap E on my keyboard. Okay, I'm going to go over one of the corners. I'm going to hold down Option and Shift and just drag that in just to give it a little bit more breathing room. Okay, fantastic. Let's do a quick save on that to update it. You can see how very quickly they're using the grid tool here and using the gap tool rather, and using a couple of pathfinders has completely changed the look of this. If we just tap W on the keyboard to go into preview mode, that's looking okay. I think that's looking pretty good. All right. But we do need a text frame, okay, for this. They've asked for a text frame that's going to carry some other information, such as how often the farmers markets are open. So I'm going to need to make some decisions about that in a moment. Okay, but for now, I'm going to just work on the fitting of some of these images. Now, I could here click on this image because she's kind of out of the frame and bring that into frame. But another option I have, okay, if I go for the images of the image at the top of the nice bearded jovial fellow in his van just there, I could also try this option, content aware fit, in which Sensei will examine that image and work out what the subject is and bring it into the center of the frame or position it more. I said, there you go. It's had a go at doing it. It's not my favorite, that one. Sometimes it works really, really well. Other times, not so well. So this is where I'm going to have to override this manually. So I'm just going to go ahead and resize that. I'm holding down Shift, okay, while I pull at that corner. And then I'm using my arrow keys here and the Shift key to move this more quickly to get the composition that I think works best for that. There we go. And also have to be aware, by the way, it's a good idea to tap that W thing because it hides the bleed from you. You need the bleed to be there, okay, but it hides the bleed. So you can make sure that the composition is the way you'd like it to be. Okay, did the lady get cut in half, or she was cut in half earlier? So no, she's fine now. Who else is cutting off? Let's have a quick look. That's not actually looking too bad, if I'm honest. I'm not so mad for the fishmonger down at the bottom. I think the fishmonger's going to disappear in a moment. This one here, I think this could do with a little bit more of a change in the composition. There we go. That's too big, Tony. There we are, something like that. And then just bring that so you've got some more of those people actually in the image. There we go. Fantastic. All right then. So a quick save on that. Now we need to work out that text frame there. Oh, so Clever was already thinking W, press W. And Liz in the chat is saying, Sensei. Carol's mind was blown. Excellent, Carol. This is good. We like that. And what a delicious food item on the screen. Which bit? It all looks delicious. It all looks lovely. I'm going to get rid of. So I've got to make a decision here because I need to remove two of these things. This one I really like because that's a really, really engaging picture. Yeah, I like it. Super, super smiley. If I was doing this for real, I would definitely want to do that. Let's just resize this and make sure auto fit is on, which it is at the top. And let's have a look at what auto fit might be able to do for us. So I'm going to go back to the gap tool. I'm going to tap U on my keyboard. Yeah, and then I'm going to bring this down. And auto fit will kind of move the image, okay, in a way along with the frame, okay, so that it actually stays pretty much the way I want it to be. Okay, so that's pretty good. That could actually be slightly larger. For some reason, I've got, it's because I've got the gap tool on. There we go. I'm going to bring that up slightly from there. So I'm clicking here inside of the dimensions, making sure they're linked. Yeah, I think that's much, much better. And I'm using the Shift key here to increase that in larger increments. I'm going to hit return to apply that. And then up to the top. I think that works great because that is a great smile. There we go. Now, something else you'd need to check here with each of these images, and there are other ways to do this. So you can use pre-flighting, which is not for today, but you could use that to do this. But if we go to the links panel and have a look at all of the links we have here, and making sure that the link info area is open underneath. If this was going to print, it would need to have a certain amount of information to print, or else it's going to look soft and horrible. Okay, so we need to check that there's enough resolution inside of the images that we've got. Now, all of these are going to be just fine because they're quite big images. But if we click on one, let's use this one here because that's the one we perhaps made largest, or this here of the Asian chef here. We can find out bits of information there by clicking on that file. We can see that it's using the RGB color space. Yeah, its actual PPI is 300. its effective PPI here is 1704, which is the opposite problem. There's actually too much information there. So what I might need to do at some other point is go through the ones that are super, super high and then just resize them and relink them in Photoshop. That would be a good idea to do it. It tells me that that's currently at 17.6% of its actual size. So that is something you'd need to do before you go sending it away to a printer, because they will charge you for fixing things like that typically. Yeah, make sure that you check that the effective PPI is fine. Okay, so this sausage image is too good to waste. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that one to the clipboard. I'm then going to decide which I don't want to keep here. I'm going to need to get rid of the cakes as well. You'll see why in just a moment. Okay, and then I'm going to get rid of these maybe, and then just click on that and choose paste into. Yeah, you can see Option Command V just to get that in like so. Perfect. There we go. I think that's a good image. Right, so I've got to get rid of this frame just here. And this one I've got to make wider, because this is going to contain the text that the client would want me to use. I'm also going to need to resize this frame up to the same size as this one. You can see that the auto fit thing there is working very well for me. That flan, not the best thing there, so I think I'm going to get rid of that. I'm going to pop back to the bridge here, and I'm going to pick up the pastries that I had before. So if I just do this, place in InDesign, whoops, and just drop that in there. There we go. That's a much better shot for that. How do you think this is looking so far, by the way? Let me know. Oh, Michelle's got to go. Sorry. Sensei is watching. Got it. Oh, Clever said just about, I doubt Sensei would be quite as good as Tony just yet. Oh, thank you. That's very good. Ah, oh, brilliant. Right. So, got all of those things just there. Perfect. And again, another quick update save. Now, the client did provide me with some information, such as colors that it wants to use. And the background they would like to use here is the same color as the text from the lettering. What could possibly go wrong? Which is this darkest teal. So I'm actually just going to copy that hex code there. Okay, because that's what they've given me, because that's what people do apparently these days, is they give you colors in hex codes. And then I'm going to just double click here. Okay, I'm going to paste that value. Okay, now I do have the option here to add this as a CMYK swatch. Really, I should be working towards that working space, but I don't have to, because modern RIPs these days can cope with RGB input, provided you save the correct type of PDF, of course. So I'm just going to click OK, and there we are. We've now got that. Now I need to change this so it can accept text. And again, that's something InDesign lets you do very, very easily. I can simply go up to the Object menu. You can do this via a right click as well. Come down to Content and change it from graphic to text. And even if you've drawn something with the frame tool, you can go ahead and do that as well. And Caroline said, it's looking great, Tony. Thank you. And hungry, delicious food is a great heading for this. It is a good heading for that. I think I'm going to use that, Debaldev. I think so. And looks great. I'll be booking my trip to Great Throppington. Well, good luck with finding it. And I wouldn't bother Googling it. It's just not real, not a real place. Okay, so here's my text frame like so. What I'm going to do is I am going to get my type tool, so tap T on my keyboard to do that, and click inside the frame. So let's borrow that line from Debaldev. Hungry, let's go hungry here, and delicious food. I'm going to put delicious food is here. Or I know, let's be more marketing about it. Oh, awits you, and now it's in my excitement, I've lost the ability to type. I think I've inherited that from I've borrowed that particular technique from Liz. Right, so this isn't the easiest thing to see just at the moment. So I'm going to change that to paper. I'd also like to center align this. Okay, now you can see there are alignment controls available to me in the control strip at the top. It just depends how wide your screen actually is for how much information you get there. But there's a shortcut to center things. Shift Command, that'd be Shift Control on Windows, C. Okay, and that's a redraw error, by the way, from InDesign, not anything else. Okay, so that centers it. Shift Command L will left align it. Shift Command R will right align it, and there's more. Quick question from Rick. When I export a PDF from InDesign, I get version 4 ICC profiles were converted to version 2 ICC profiles during PDF export. How do I find the offending asset? You're going to need to use pre-flight for that, Rick. And if I were you, I'd go to the Adobe community with that one, because this particular session isn't really at that level. But you can use pre-flight and you can check for ICC profiles. Great Troppington sounds like it exists, though it doesn't. Or sounds like it is. Well, that's because there is a place called Great Thoppington that hasn't got the additional R in it. But there we are. And Liz saying, yes, not being able to type is my speciality. Okay, so the other thing I want to do here is I want to change the typeface that's in use. Let's use my cool shortcut. Let's do Command 6, which highlights the first available field there. I'm then going to type Fat F. So Fat Frank is very progressive for an organization like this, but this is exactly the same typeface used just there. So that's kind of good. I like that. So let's go ahead and make a paragraph style off of that. The lady in the hat is very happy to get their courgettes and she's selling them. Reverb. But anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this into a paragraph style. My excuse, I'm a typesetter, not a typist. There you go. In a future episode next week, I'll show you a typometer just so you can see what one of those is, just for giggles. I'm currently in the character options, okay, inside of the control strip at the top. If you look very closely at the left-hand edge, yeah, okay, you'll see that the A icon there is highlighted. The icon underneath that is the paragraph options, and that's how I can switch between the two, right? So I could go ahead and click on that icon. It's called a pilcrow, by the way, just in case you want to know. Okay, that's one of the signs there that are used by people who mark up type. We used to. Okay, so that's the pilcrow just there. So I can click between those. If you want to use the keyboard to do it, if you're able to, Command Option, that would be Control Alt 7 is the way you switch between those. Okay, so now my primary options are paragraphed based just there. Clever Zep Pilcrow, and typed one in. Nice. Top skills. I like it. Ah, there we are. And I'm now going to go to paragraph styles here. New paragraph style. I'm making sure that this is going to apply to the selection. I'm just going to call this GT heading there, like so. And everything else there, Fat Frank Heavy, 12 point. Actually, because it's fitting so well in there, I don't think I want to. Yeah, I'm going to leave it at 12 points just because it looks nice in there just for the moment. But you get the idea, right? Okay, so there we are. Leading, well, I want it to go over a single line, so I'm not really worried too much about the leading. Everything else there, for the purposes of this demonstration, is fine. So I'm going to hit OK. Now, we've got another small problem here, or not, depends how you look at it. I mean, I kind of like that some of those letters actually kind of sit into the background. If I just tap W here, okay, there's a faint gap, but I might be tempted to actually move those so they do appear to bleed in from the background. But my client at this particular case, they're not into that, are they? No, we're not. There you go. See, you have it from their own mouth. So how do I change this, right? So that the text actually sits comfortably inside the frame? Well, that's where we go for our frame options. Now, the shortcut for that, if you can use them, is Command B. But you can also right click. Okay, and from there you can go ahead. See, this is you want fitting options here, but we also want frame options, which there we go, text frame options right at the top. You can tell how often I use menus just here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to change the inset spacing and make sure preview's on so you can see what it's actually doing. There we go. So I've set the inset spacing. 1 millimeter is just fine for this. This is only 12 point text here. And now we've got that. Now, I don't know what's going to happen if I hit return here. I don't know what's going to happen about the rest of the text. So I'm just going to fill a few lines, okay, with some placeholder text. Okay, now I don't want it to be all of that stuff just there. So I'm just going to remove maybe just some of this. In fact, if I just get rid of the last line and a couple of things there, do that. And then I'm going to change this so it doesn't look, so it's not all the same thing. So I'm going to go back to my paragraph options here, and I'm going to create a new style. Okay, now when you have a type style already, you can actually base things on it. This one, I don't want it to be based on anything. So I'm going to say no paragraph style. And the one you never use, okay, is this basic paragraph option. Don't use that. Okay, so let's go ahead and choose something from here. So I'm just going to, just for the time being, because we've only got about 4 minutes left, I'm actually going to choose times for this just at the moment. And I accidentally hit return on there. So now I've got to go to style options and just go back to GT body, just there like so. That's fine. So times, we'll do that medium or something just for the minute. Times get so dist, but it's so lovely. I'm going to bring that down to 11 points on a more generous leading. And then I can add some space before that text, like so. There we go. Perfect. And so now we've got all of that text in there. However, kind of looks a little bit drifty where it is, technical term, just there. So I'm going to go back to the text frame options, Command B, to do that. And what I'd like to do is vertically justify this to the center. And so that pops that neatly inside that box. There we go. Now, if that wasn't, the actual center is very rarely the optical center of things. So if I just go back into that, now I could, if I unlink these values here, add a little bit more spacing for the bottom just there, which will bring that up more into the optical center. Okay, another quick save there. So I phoned my client. I'm not going to do the pretending thing again. I phoned my client and I said, by the way, I've just put this onto Creative Cloud. You can go ahead and have a look, and I've emailed you a link to it. It's there ready for you to go. And the client is taking a look at it like this, okay, but on Creative Cloud. And they're saying, do you know what? It might be nice if all of those gaps weren't white. What about if everything was filled with that color? So you've got dark borders in between. Well, we could go ahead and do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tap M. That gives me a rectangle shape. I'm just going to click and drag like so. Okay, and then I'm going to eyedropper the text frame just there. So there we go. We've got all of that good stuff. I'm going to bring that up to the top corner of the bleed and then down to the bottom corner of the bleed. I'm going to right click that and arrange it in the stacking order here, right the way to the back. So that's working kind of nice that that's all on there. However, we can no longer read, okay, the text around the logo. Well, fortunately, the person who designed this particular logo had thought of such an eventuality. Okay, and if I pop, okay, onto this image and right click it and choose Object Layer Options, you can see how this file was inside of Illustrator, and that it's got layers here. Okay, so I can turn the actual logo layer off. If I turn on preview, you'll see that so much more quickly. I can change the teal text off there, but I've also got a layer called reverse text or rev text. And then I can just turn that on selectively without moving into InDesign or Illustrator, making any changes. Just do a quick save, tap W, and there we are. That's how far, okay, we've got today. Next week, we're going to pick up and we're going to go ahead and work on the back of this flyer. But hopefully you've enjoyed that. Looks like you have in the chat. Right clicking is my favorite. I didn't know that one. Apparently from Elf. Caroline can type until someone watches me. Well, unfortunately, not unfortunately, fortunately, I've got lots of people watching. watching. So it's kind of a handicap, really. Oh dear, so good. So good. Nice. Okay, that was a very clever logo designer, Liz. You're absolutely correct, and thank you. It's awesome. Thank you, Susan. Glad you're taking care of future self. Yes, that's the idea. Right clicking is the best, but I also like wrong clicking. That's a good one, Tim. Loving it. Wonderful stream. Thank you very much. Thanks, Rick. That's great. Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Annika. Thank you, Caroline. Thank you, Dadub. Brilliant. Oh, fantastic stuff. Thank you, Neil. Ta-ta for now. And Liz is laughing away at wrong clicking. Well, that's it for us for now. Tomorrow, of course, I think it's French Strange tomorrow, actually, thinking about it. But anyway, I'll catch you next Monday here on Adobe Live. If you want to watch my US stream, that's on Wednesday. Check my Instagram for details on that. But for now, bye.